Magnus, pleasure to meet you this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
I want to talk to you about Vested because you've been involved in a whole number of Vested deals. I said, firstly, what's your view of Vested? Because it's taken quite a long time, hasn't it, for it really to take off? But it seems to be taking off quite considerably at this point in time. Why do you think that's the case as well?
Well, I think, at least the clients I've been working with for the last couple of years with Vested, they first of all, they didn't, they haven't heard about it. And then most of them, they want to have a true partnership, but they don't know how to do it, or if there is a model that is working, and for them to understand that there is a model and it's actually working, and take those steps and get all the acceptances needed, because when you run Vested, you do not only need the acceptances from the functional head, if it's facilities, for instance, but also from procurement, from legal, from finance, and so forth, but also from the supplier side for sure, and that takes some time.
No, I can imagine. Now, I believe you've done 14 deals, or been involved in 14 deals at EY on Vested.
Yeah, so I've been part of 14 signed deals, and then I'm part of 3 ongoing Vested deals as well. But then, of course, I've been working, the last over 20 years with outsourcing. So I've done, over 100, traditional deals as well. So it's, and we're working with both traditional deals and Vested deals, and there's a big difference, of course. But Vested, if you want to go through partnership, we think and we see that model is the best one.
I was going to say, what's been your learning during that period of time with Vested? What's been your core learning?
Yeah, I think the first thing was that when I heard about Vested first time, that was back in 2013. Then I thought that I have done a couple of good partnership deals for clients, and I thought that I was pretty good at outsourcing and sourcing and pretty good at partnerships. But then when I understood what it actually is, not after doing all the training, then I understood a little bit. But after doing the first deal, then I really understood that this is something totally different for everyone, for the buyer, for the supplier, and also we are the advisor. So it's a totally different role and a different way of working for the advisor as well. So totally different, I would say. that was the biggest learning.
I mean, that's a fair one, because actually what critics will say is actually common sense, but actually it's not, is it? It's actually harder to put into place than many realize.
Yeah, because there are, everyone is so used to do sourcing and do procurement, and all companies, they have their processes and their ways of doing it, or their ways of making decisions and so forth. But this process is, getting into a Vested agreement. That's a totally different process, a totally different way of making decisions. And, there's not many things that are, looking like the old sourcing models. So, yeah.
And actually, do you think outsourcing is changing? Are you seeing real changes in the way people are looking at outsourcing?
Yes and no, I would say, because I think that still there will be lots of traditional sourcing and traditional contracts on the market for a long time, and sometimes they're also better to have if you're buying a commodity, or if you're not mature enough to step into a trust-based partnership. Then I think that a traditional model is probably much better. And that will, stay on the market. But there are more and more companies that we see, and I also think that COVID-19 has been pushing for change, because we have seen that lots of companies having these traditional models where you have more, sticks than carrots in the contract is not working when when you have tough times. But we have seen that through partnership deals where the supplier or the partner then is incentivized doing the right things, and that you can move fast and change things in a fast, smooth way. That is what the buyer wants. And also then the buyers then understand that they are the ones deciding the model. That's normally how it is. The buyer is deciding the model and you get what you buy. And that understanding that there are other models on the market and that you can work in a totally different way is coming more and more, I would say.
Now, the one thing I'm very conscious of the 14 deals, how many of those have been in the Nordics, can I ask?
I would say probably 8 out of those 14.
Because it is interesting that the Nordics have embraced this far more than other parts of Europe and the US, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look at the Nordics, there are a couple of things. And when I say Nordics, it's like Sweden, Denmark, Norway, Finland. Some of these Nordic deals are only Sweden or only Norway, to be honest. Some of them are Nordic. But if you look at the culture and the thinking up in the Nordics, we are not, the pioneers in many things, but at the same time, we are, you can say, early adopters. When they see that something is working, then we dare to, try it. And I would say all vested deals I did for the first time for a company, they said that this is a pilot. We are trying something different and let's see if it works. Now, a couple of those companies have done more than one deal, so they like it. But we are early adopters, but not the pioneers. But then also, the mindset is very much collaboration, teaming, and trust. We trust most people. We trust most companies. All the contracts are not that thick that they are in Anglo-Saxon countries. But so I think that helps, and not that hierarchic organizations either. So you can work a little bit faster and smoother in that sense. At the same time, it's a consensus-driven culture, and consensus-driven is good when you have had the decision to go to start the vested deal, because that is, the co-creation of a vested deal between buyer and supplier. That's very much, consensus-driven. But to get the decision to start, then it's pretty tough to have a consensus, because then you need all stakeholders lined up saying, yes, we want to try this. So it's pros and cons.
Well, I was going to ask that, because actually when you do the international deals, is it quite hard to get different cultures on side with the principals?
Yes, so the global ones we have been supporting, they have been more top-down driven, only maybe 2-3 people saying, now we're going to do this, and then you start. And then, of course, there are different cultures in different countries. But we have seen that if you do vested in the right way, then the vested culture beats, the country culture, so to say. And also the company culture is very important, because if you have a company culture on a global company that says, for instance, we like collaboration, or we like innovation, or we like sustainability, and we want to do everything to do better for those things, then it's also easier to run vested.
It's quite a sea change, though, isn't it? So particularly for a lot of, as you say, the Anglo-Saxon countries have been more about control mentality at times. It is quite interesting how the pandemic potentially has been a catalyst to that change.
Yeah, but at the same time, I would say, compared to some countries, where you cannot do much without, lots of instructions and lots of controls and lots of, everything written into the contract, then I would say that working with UK-based companies or rolling out vested in UK is not that hard, to be honest, compared to some other countries. And I think working together, I've been working, both in traditional outsourcing deals, but also in vested deals with the UK, and I think they are all up for it. As long as they, get the decision and this is what we're going to do, and they understand what it is, then I don't see that much of a problem. Rather the opposite, actually.
Yeah, there seems to be a sea change going on, I think, at the moment, which I think is quite fascinating. One of the other debates is obviously about the legal document. How do you write vested into a legal document? But most of it's about behaviours, isn't it? It's getting the behaviours right and the trust right, which must be a skill in its own self, isn't it?
Yeah, if you look at a traditional sourcing, what you normally do is that you have your own legal people writing the contract. Normally you have your standard, clauses. And those are pretty buyer friendly, of course, and you try to push most risks over to the supplier side, and then you send over the contract to the suppliers in a request for proposal, and then you want them to come back with if they have any markups and something like that. And then you also normally say that if you have many markups, then you have not that big chance to win. So you use your buyer power to push the suppliers into your agreement. that's what you normally see. But in a vested deal, then you try to write a contract, what we call a relational contract, which is a win-win, lose-lose contract, and based on, for instance, risks, more focused on who is the best party to control the risk and bear the risk, and so you design the contract in a collaborative way with a vested mindset. And what you normally do then is that you have also an external legal party that is neutral, that is writing what you agree upon in the workshops. So it's not the buyer side writing the contract, and it's not where outsourcing actually started many years back, but most outsourcing contracts started with the suppliers writing the first contracts. But this
is right?
Yeah, because when the suppliers do it, every day, they sign deals every day, they say that yeah, we've done it, we have a good contract, and then that happened to be pretty supplier friendly contracts, and then the buyers side signed it, and then they said, oh, now we need to do a change in the next generation, and then it goes over to the buyer side. Now we write the contract, so it's good for us. A vested contract is a contract that should be good for both parties. So it's balanced. But it's also focusing on driving the right behaviors, as you say. So a big thing in vested is that you're working with the guiding principles. There are 6 guiding principles. We have had clients adding 1 or adding 2, but 6 guiding principles that are not just on a paper saying that these are the guiding principles we as buyers and we as suppliers will follow, but they are also part of the contract. So if you breach these guiding principles, it's also a contract breach. So you build in the mindset and the behaviors into the contract, and that's pretty powerful.
A lot of the 14 deals, how successful have those been?
I would say everything from very, very successful to some that are struggling. So, but none of them have, said that we should have done something different. We should not have gone vested. They all say, even the ones that are struggling, they are saying that vested is the right model. It's not the problem of the model. Normally, the ones that are struggling, they have either, been cheating a little bit when it comes to implementation and training of the people on both sides, buyer and supplier side. And we also see a big problem when you have new senior stakeholders or leaders coming into the firm, because they don't know what true partnership or what vested is, and they were not part of the decisions before and not part of the journey, and they have not been trained. So of course they are questioning the model a lot. So you need to focus a lot on them. But we have seen some really good success stories and some award-winning companies as well on the market.
And what do you believe? How do you think Vested's going to grow going forward from here?
Well, I think for the companies that are focusing on, we want to have a partner that helps us with both the digitization, because we see in facilities management, for instance, there will be a big change, using new technology. And either you say that you will do that yourself as a buyer, or you see that you will have a partner helping you with that. So the ones that really wants to, drive the transformation, the digital transformation together with supplier, and also focusing on sustainability improvements, they, I think, will be more focused on also rewarding the supplier on driving that transformation and supporting sustainability, and also workplace experience or employee experience becomes much more important for most companies. And if you also then have a supplier, facility management supplier, that is rewarding and incentivized on improving workplace and employee experience, they will of course move more into these models. And we also see that there are new areas with outside of facilities, for instance, that are starting doing vested.
That's interesting. Can I ask what areas those are? What kind of areas?
For instance, we are starting up manufacturing vested deal, a big global company, producing lots and have factories around the world. They are now, moving into a vested partnership with one of the contract manufacturers. That will be very interesting to see how that is going, because that is also transforming that business, which is very instruction and power based when I look at those contracts and how they are working today.
Interesting. I mean, you're right. The big three topics of discussion are digital, sustainability, and employee experience. And particularly employee experience, to try to get people back to the workspace is going to be quite a challenge in many ways. Sustainability seems to be really on the growth curve in a big way, where people really want to make massive change now, which is encouraging in many ways. Are you seeing the same?
Yeah, very much so. And we can also see that we were looking into one contract now where they have improved sustainability as one of the desired outcomes in the model. And they have seen lots of proactivity and innovations coming out of the supplier, because the supplier is then incentivized to drive sustainability improvements. And at the same time, in that same contract, they are also incentivized on workplace experience. So we have seen now during COVID-19 that there have been lots of activity within those two areas, which are super important, and actually also around digitalization. But that is not one of the outcomes, but still lots of activity around it.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Because we see many companies nowadays on the buyer side, they say that we really want these things from the supplier. We want proactivity, innovation, see those new technology tools and all of that. And they are a little bit, they find it strange that the suppliers aren't more active. But at the same time, why should they? Because they are not getting incentivized and rewarded on it, and we know that it's a low margin business for the suppliers, so they don't have all the good people working on each and every client with these things. So of course, these outcome-based price models also drive behaviors from both the buyer side for sure, but also the supplier side.
That's really interesting, isn't it? I mean, in the last year, 18 months, it's seen great change, hasn't it? And you must be seeing that particularly in all kinds of contracts, vested and non-contracts as well. That change is kind of seeping through all areas.
Excuse me, can you repeat that?
Those changes are going to all types of contracts. Is wherever you're going, those changes are coming through, aren't they?
Yeah, lots of changes, and some have been negotiating hard and tough, and some have said that okay, let's see if we can find a pragmatic way of changing an old classic traditional contract, and we also see more on the buyer side coming out to market now, due to, for instance, that I see that one thing is that they have had some problems with their existing suppliers. So that's why they are coming out to market. But also some of them having lots of suppliers. I see it's tough to drive change if we are going to roll out for instance, a new workplace model due to the new normal or workplace of the future. To drive that with lots of suppliers, it's easier than maybe to have a few partners that can help you rolling this out in many countries or around the world, for instance. That's also a big driver.
Look, it's interesting. Look, Magnus, can I say thank you? That's been superb to listen to you and your thoughts today. Thank you very much for your time.
Happy to have that you had me, and thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.